Hello, this is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics here at Mid-America Christian University. I am here with our Communication 2113 Media Culture and Social Influence Week 1 video lecture. Our video lecture series is also what we refer to as an asynchronous dialogue, which means questions and responses are happening in different places, space, and time. We are bending the rules, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Each week, we will come together and draw upon student discussion questions specifically from course readings, and we will do our best to engage those questions or at least skim from the top of them, right? With this course in particular, we are seeing a healthy increase in our numbers. So it's likely a scenario where we can't get to every possible question, but this is actually a good thing because what it encourages us to do is make sure and proof, double check, or put a little extra elbow grease into those discussion questions, assignment 1 each week. And we will look at those discussion questions and pick amongst the most robust, well-worded, and perhaps syncretic or thought out questions, and provide some responses that help us to tease out extra layers and meanings and discussion or discourse from those readings, from those course readings we have in class. And as a healthy recap, our course readings include a pair of main texts from author, it's going to be a tongue twister, author Arthur Asa Berger. Berger's Messages, which functions well as an introductory to communication textbook. Can't cover everything, but covers a lot in a short amount of time, as well as Berger's Media and Society, this critical perspective. Ooh, what does that mean? 3rd edition. And then we will have, perhaps not in week 1, but in subsequent weeks, some readings from Communication Theory and Millennial Popular Culture from Kathleen Glenister Roberts, an edited anthology full of short burst chapters that hopefully give us rich case studies to help us understand how we can use and apply communication theories and methods in and with the media content we come into contact with. That being said, let's jump into some questions here. You all have questions. I have answers. Some answers, maybe not all answers, but we'll see what we get here. All right, looks like picking from the just grabbing the stack here. First question is going to come from John. John, who's always out to get me, having had class with me previously. Always asking a trick question here or there, trying to get me to reveal too much on camera. I think that's what's going on. So anyway, looking at questions from our Media and Society book first. Question: here we go. Let's have some fun. Do millennials mock or laugh at the older generation's taste in television shows the way they do with our music? As mentioned on page 6, I'm sure it's both, right? This is going to be the cop-out response to many of your questions today, I think. But that's part of the exciting process. Do they mock and laugh at older generations? Yes, but not as much as they used to. I don't know. There are a lot of soft snowflake, if you will, millennials out there that aren't as interested in being mean, and we see the reverse side of that spectrum. So probably the right answer is they're not concerned with your taste. their main question is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? So that's an icebreaker question. Get the door opened here. Looking at Berger's Messages, all right? So Messages, an introduction to communication. Do signs really influence people? Of course. If so, do we notice these signs, or is it in the form of subliminal message? Yes and yes. And even when we know what these messages are doing, when it becomes aware or obvious, right? Something like advertising, regardless of whether or not we quote unquote reject the message, we're still receiving it, and it is still having some kind of impact, whether it's immediate or just in terms of how it shapes our worldview, even in microscopic ways, even in unconscious or subconscious ways. All right, so the messages and the media messages and the communication messages we receive are constantly molding and shaping us. So that's an important way to think about it as we dive in to course materials. What would be the form of message you generate most often in your communication? And I think many of our intro textbooks or textbooks on interpersonal communication, that sort of thing, if we gather the research up, it's going to be consensus that we spend more time. If we had extreme quizzes, this would always be on that quiz. We spend more time performing nonverbal communication than we do verbal communication. All right, and so not only that, as you perhaps tying in from alternative course we offer here, Introduction to Computer Mediated Communication, arguably we're spending more and more time performing CMC, all right? Computer Mediated Communication in all its forms or fashions. So yes, nonverbals and perhaps even computer mediated, right? Digital communication. We had a couple of primer videos in week 1 on cultural studies. Why are cultural studies taught so briefly in high school courses, for example, social studies and science, instead of beginning with an introductory course on cultural studies? Okay, so we're getting to a theme here of why aren't we getting exposure to these types of themes earlier in education? And there's definitely, without getting too political, there where there's smoke, there's fire sometimes, right? As we say. Cultural studies can be viewed as and this is my term here, although I didn't originate it, slippery. All right, it can be perceived as a slippery topic, and slippery topics meaning conversations that have a lot of ambiguities and openness, and they're co-created and negotiated along the way, right? These types of topics tend to not sit well with some state policy makers, all right, and at least in some states. And so cultural studies becomes this almost in terms of semiotics, a sign for something else, right? So no matter what you could learn about in a cultural studies course or context, there are people that have already assigned a negative meaning or value. And if those people are sort of in a position of authority in the role or world of education, then all of a sudden, that's sort of something we don't want in the curriculum, or perhaps it's just non-essential, right? This is why we talk about the difference in the hard and the soft sciences, because the hard sciences can help us lead to things like medical breakthroughs and so on, whereas the soft sciences might be, let's explore, inconclusive topics like media effects, perhaps. So slippery is a term to think about when we consider the values and the themes, the topicality of cultural studies. All right. Not going to take that bait. Let's see. Vanya Questions. Question from Burgers, Media, and Society. We read the introduction in week 1, as well as chapter 1. Pick your favorite TV show and create focal points to analyze the show. Aha, I see what you're doing there. I see. This was a trick. This was a trick to see if I could demonstrate for us. And in fact, one of the key methods, this is our crossover, not just the author, but there's at least one key idea that crosses over both of these texts, and it's Berger's own focal points model. And so if we turn to as early as page 1 in the textbook, he outlines the focal points model for us, and what we can understand here is this is a method or tool devised by this scholar. It's a way in which we can read or assess media artifacts, what we call texts. All right. And so we have these 5 points of view from which we can analyze something. And so most of them, not unlike the author's name, start with A to help that memory bank, and then we have an M. All right, so the art, audience, artist, America, and medium. And so, as no doubt, if you even cracked the book, you very likely got to this. You understand the definitions associated, and you can check the glossary as well. We don't need to regurgitate all of that. But a favorite television text that comes to mind. I hate to have favorites. That's a tricky. That's a slippery question because perhaps there's just too many I'm passionate about, or I don't like choosing. Right. But maybe lists. Maybe if we made a list and then we could just constantly evaluate them for, I don't know, a 5-week course cycle or something, that could be cool. So let's think about an artwork or text. All right. For example, rabbit out of the hat here. Let's say Twin Peaks. All right. So Twin Peaks is our text or artifact. It's a piece of media culture created. It's specific. It has a context and so on. Its artist would be its creators, right? The people that put it together. In this case, most often, while hundreds of people come together to develop something like a TV series, which is what Vanya prompted in her question, artist might be what we call the writer creators or showrunners, as they're now coined. In this case, the most frequent associations is David Lynch, film director first and foremost, an artist, and then author Mark Frost. Okay, and so you could also think of the artist as other producers. There have been different producers, different writers on the show, and so there's a collective effort there. But then at the same time, there's a lot of unique imprints, right? The signature marks of those two. You could think of the production studios as part of that larger constellation of the artist. The show originally aired on ABC, then its revival or reincarnation has aired on Showtime. So there's also a film somewhere in the middle there. But its audience, well, we could talk about the audience. Who's watching Twin Peaks? Who likes a Twin Peaks? What's this all about? And there's the initial audience, maybe when the show was on the air, but as it dwindled, only the loyal audiences stayed, so we might call them a cult audience. Lynch fans, right? Cinephiles that follow the David Lynch canon. We can think about the enthusiastic social media communities that rally around this text, auteur enthusiasts, critics, TV critics, and maybe even film critics, right, that sort of celebrate and circulate the text and discourse about it. And then grown-ups, right? Twin Peaks, it's not a show that's built to, or a show that naturally appeals to maybe younger people, although sometimes it features younger characters age-wise. It's a movie for grown-ups because it wrestles with dark, deep themes, and it is highly possible for a mass audience to not quite get there due to lack of experience or whatnot. It's just too dense sometimes. The medium is television, although the medium's also film. The medium could be DVD, right? But it's a television product most often. It's had a couple of tie-in books too, so notice how even Twin Peaks, not unlike cultural studies, is slippery. And then finally, America. It symbolizes America in terms of small-town nostalgia, cultural contradictions, fragmentation of American family, this sort of nostalgia and longing for the past, donuts and coffee, dreams, fears and hopes, surrealism. All of these themes describe American qualities and that. So we'll be right back and we'll continue this discussion for communication 2113.